Stáitse buniú aigean cosar bolog agus latrum.
A state defined by discrimination, in employment, in housing and in rights, maintained by repression and the exclusion of nationalists from the corridors of power. When nationalists took to the streets peacefully demanding their rights, they faced a sectarian police force armed to preserve their state and their way of life at any cost. Murderous suppression of peaceful protests by the British Army. Raging mobs of loyalists assisted by the state who set light to the home of families in Bombay Street, Ardoyne and across the north. An internment without trial. What the state failed to grasp is that the nationalist people are a proud and resilient one, and no more would they be on their knees. Many ordinary but extraordinarily determined, principled and brave men and women refused to be silenced and rose up in defiance. The batons and bullets of the state could kill and maim, but they could not break their spirits. Tonight, this is the story of one of those very ordinary yet extraordinarily courageous people.
Saidiúr, Gníomhaí, Cumrádaí agus Tíorthráthóir. Seo é scéal Óglach Bobby Storey.
Told by his close friends, those who served long, hard time with him, who helped build the peace, and who helped build Sinn Féin with him and to take our struggle to where it is today.
Let's not be shocked at challenges as they come along. Let's recognise them for what they are, and every Republican across the island shoulder the weight and keep going.
Well, gee, Dave, I first met Bobby in the months of April and May 1972, after the family had been burnt out of their home in the old Park and Bone area of North Belfast and had to come to West Belfast and in Riverdale in particular for the safety of their family. The house they got at the time was on Finicky Road North. It was a derelict house, but because of the number of houses needed to facilitate people in a similar situation, they could only get what would be called a derelict house. We knew it locally as the Pit, and the family stayed there for a couple of months until just across the road from here they got their permanent housing, in which Peggy, Bobby the Daddy, Bobby Jr., Seamus, Geraldine and Brian moved in and stayed until very recently, and that was their family home. So really meeting Bobby for the first time was an indelible fingerprint on my part from Bobby. He is an impressionable guy, even at 16 years of age when you meet him. His towering height was the first impression you get, but his personality, his ability to reach out, make friends very quickly and impress by his dedication on what he wanted to do, and what he wanted to do was going to carry on for the rest of his life. Bobby and I picked up a friendship that for me was like two water divider sticks. We never parted from that day until Bobby passed, and it's only my honour to call Bobby a friend and a comrade. It's a privilege for me and will always be that. Bobby was also a very brave and courageous volunteer. He led from the front, didn't expect anybody else to do anything other than he would have done himself. He was a natural leader. He led from the front and showed strength and character, was gregarious, funny and laughable, and lit up the company when he came into it, no matter where it was. And in those days they were pretty necessary qualities and characters of a leader, and he had them in abundance. Particularly when you think that this area was surrounded by numerous British Army forts. Just across the way here in Musgrave, Fort Mona, Silver City, a pillbox outpost at St Mary's Training College. You had Woodburn Barracks, you had Andersonstown Barracks, and you had Casement Park, all occupied by British forces. That's what our generation, and in particular the younger people, had to face up to and deal with as young people. And many of those came, I can assure you, with frightening encounters with the British Army. On one occasion where Bobby, it must be said, saved my life. We were not too far from here when Bobby and I were walking down the street, and at that particular time I just didn't want to be stopped by this particular British Army patrol, and it wasn't going to happen, so I had to go a different direction, and Bobby stepped in when he saw the lead on the British Army patrol, a regimental sergeant major, cock his weapon and shout halt at me. And later on that night, when after I meeting Bobby, he told me quite clearly that that particular British soldier unlocked his safety catch and was about to fire at my back, and he saved my life by jumping on that particular British soldier, and the other British soldiers from the other patrol all joined in, and a famous melee broke out at the time that allowed me to go on about my lawful business and not be harassed by the British Army. And again, as I said, later on meeting Bobby that night, which was a bit of a tearful reunion because we both knew how close we came. He'd probably been shot that night by the British Army. April of 1973, he had turned 17 and was eventually interned, and I'm sure to many a sigh of relief from the local British Army garrisons. And that was Bobby. And he joined then his comrades from 1973 until 1975 in Long Kesh. After that, there was a ceasefire in 1975 where most internees, prisoners, etc., were released. And that was the first time, probably for most of those guys and most of us in our adult lives, that we were able to enjoy some kind of a social life, but still keep the cause to the front and centre at all times. When I say a social life, Bobby's family had a beautiful holiday home down in Ballyhornan, a great escape outlet for all, and I had the pleasure of being invited down there by Bobby and Peggy, the mummy and daddy, for a couple of weekends, and it was great relief. Haven't seen the sea in 7 or 8 years, and there you go, we had some great times, but that was to come to an end, because at the end of 1975, going into the early months of 1976, the war was to kick off again, and obviously Bobby, front and centre, straight at it, straight into the struggle again, unyielding, unbending, and taking the struggle to where it counted, to where the British were, wherever that was.
When I first met Big Bob, he had been in jail a number of times. He actually spent over 20 years in jail when you count it all up. But I think it was in '82, and I was down at a visit in the H blocks, and it was Paddy Adams who introduced me to him. And I remember his handshake. I remember first of all the size of him. I knew him by reputation, but he had a hand like what we used to call a Monday shovel. It was a huge, I thought he was a countryman because he near squeezed my hand to bits. And I'm fairly tall, but he stood over me. And because I knew him, I was a wee bit in awe about him, but he said to me, probably making it up, I've heard about you, to try and make me feel better. And then I got to know him after that. I obviously did know him by reputation. For the escape, he was the most obvious person, besides being one of the key planners in it. It was the most obvious thing. He knew it inside out. He had a mind for detail, not just detail in a military operation, which this was, but a mind for detail about meeting somebody, about remembering things about them when he met them again. About we used to accuse him of overthinking things, so he'd even be having a conversation with you and then say something, and then he'd think in the middle of his whatever he was saying next, I might have put that the wrong way, and then he'd explain what he really meant after that. But it was that preciseness in his thoughts. He used to do, he was practically he was the barrack room lawyer. When people come in and they had their depositions, he was the guy who went through them. He also understood that to be a revolutionary, without necessarily having to say he was a revolutionary, he understood that I understood he was a natural revolutionary. He understood that it wasn't just to be in a military fight, that you were part of the people, you had to be part of that community. And that even in jail, it wasn't just IRA people who were in jail or any other organisation that was involved, it was people. And so he had the idea of being a part of an army, but also that there had to be a community. And he was part of moving from that idea of being, a prisoner, a part of an organisation, until we're part of a community, not just in jail, but the overall community. And he understood that instinctively, didn't have to explain it. That's the type of person he was. Charisma, he just had it in bundles. Whether he was talking about something serious, or whether he was talking about something that was funny, and he had a great sense of humour, mostly around other people. But he was also self-deprecating. He would have cracked jokes about himself. And then we're standing in the PD here, the Andersonstown Social Club, and he gave a lot of his life to this as well, as his father did before him. So wherever he went, he was just 24/7. And in terms of dealing with whether it was the enemy, and just to talk about people who seen him as the enemy, they also respected him. They might not like him, they might have actually hated him, but they respected the ability he had. And I've heard that over the years from people who you'd be very surprised that even though we're political unionists till all of that, everybody knew Big Bob. That's what it came down to. And as I say, he had a natural authority. He never had to, what you might say, pull rank. He was there. I saw him bringing people back into the struggle who had left it, from the mere fact that he was telling them there was still a place for them in the struggle, even if they thought that their military part of it was over and they'd gone off to live in the house, to get a job and go on with their life. He would convince them that there was another part to play. In a way, what Bobby Sands said, there's a part for everybody in the struggle, no matter how big or how small. He was able, like nobody else, to draw that out of people. His politicisation, I think like many other of our generation, his politicisation wasn't that he was brought up as a strong Republican and it was ingrained in him. It was that he saw what was happening around him in the late 60s into the 70s, and of course he was already in the IRA at the beginning of the 70s. And no matter what turmoil he went through, no matter what beatings he went through, and he went through many beatings in the barracks, beatings outside when he was stopped by the Brits, because once they knew that he was an active Republican, they tortured him throughout his teenage years and right through that. None of that could put him off. He took the beatings, some of them very difficult, and even in the escape, when they had him naked, they took all of his clothes off, found him at the river, and trailed him along a gravel path for a considerable period, turned the skin off his back. That night he would be cracking jokes, and was cracking jokes out the door, told other people, and there's other people who went through the same thing, and what he was trying to do was lift their morale. So he was somebody who will not be forgotten. He's still being talked about even now, and people talk about the inspiration of somebody when they die, and Bobby is clearly an inspiration. Now that he's passed on, but let's be very frank about it, he had that inspiration while he was alive. And people often talk about inspiration post somebody living, but when Bobby was alive, he inspired everybody. And of course he was a very loving person, and sometimes that isn't talked about enough. He had a great amount of love in him. And to sum him up, somebody said to me actually after he died, was talking about him, and he wasn't necessarily that close to him, but he said to me, he says, it wasn't that people loved Bobby, it was that they were in love with him. He says that was the difficulty. Everybody was in love with him.
The road not taken. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveller, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as far, and having perhaps a better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for the passing there, had worn them really just about the same. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference.
I'm glad of this opportunity to contribute to remembering Bobby in his first anniversary. It has been a difficult and challenging year for us as a family, and that includes his sister Geraldine and her extended family. I also want to thank our wider circle of family and friends, and also the Republican family in Belfast, across the country, and indeed others across the world, for the messages of love and support. In addition, I have to mention the kindness shown to us from certain people, far too many to mention here, from when Bobby passed, and who continue to support us to this day. It has been overwhelming. Bobby was so loved for his caring and giving nature, especially when it came to his family and his 12 grandchildren, who knew that when they saw him they were in for a treat, whether it was a storytelling or even better, a trip to Smith's toy store. They miss him so much. Bobby was everything and meant a lot to me. We had a very happy life together and he missed so much and I miss him so much. So on behalf of the entire family circle, I want to thank you all for your continued support and I hope you enjoy this short tribute to Bobby.
Following Bobby's release from prison in 1994, he went straight back into the struggle. The fact that it was now moving into a different mode didn't faze him at all. Bobby said, "I put the same application into my current work as I did in the past. As Republicans, we are constantly making new sites of struggle, and we have to be alert and scientific in our approach. We are about the decolonisation of the Orange State, and it's a mammoth task that we will not be deflected from." Now, that was a lot for Bobby to say without even one little stutter. We're about getting a united Ireland, about joining with others, and Bobby believed that there was no point in stopping struggling until we achieved that. He went on to say, "We've seen many sites of struggle: the civil rights movement, armed struggle, the peace process, negotiations, and now we're proceeding towards a united Ireland." And during those years, he travelled widely. He explained the Republican strategy to comrades and to the wider Republican family. In '96, he was arrested again, charged, spent 2 years on remand, and was eventually released in 1998. He was 44 years old, and he had spent more than 20 years in prison. And he described his role later on. He said, "I spoke to many activists across the country, and I would have been a very keen exponent of the leadership's decisions and the decision-making process. What it comes down to is this: many of us were very active in making sure that Republicans were informed about what was happening, so we could not get past all of the spin without giving people the confidence in where the strategy was going. We made sure that people knew, for instance, that the Good Friday Agreement was not a cut-off, it wasn't the end, it wasn't a settlement, but it provided the platform for the next level." Bobby became the chair of Belfast Sinn Féin, and then at the 6th County Cúrga. He worked diligently at building the party. The result of his work and of others can be seen in the strength of Sinn Féin today. Big Bob also believed that it was possible to build the new republic envisaged in the 1916 proclamation in a way that unionists could embrace, and in a way that the new republic would embrace unionism. And he was convinced that working with unionists as equals, we can bring them further, even to the point of persuading unionism, or a section of unionists, to accept a shared future within the concept of a united Ireland. So last June, we buried our comrade, and the quotes that I have attributed to him, words that he have said, show that he was both a political strategist and a political leader. And the state that Sinn Féin's in at the moment in terms of our progress and our support, and both states in the islands, and the fact that Mary-Lou McDonald is now the first woman and the first Sinn Féin representative to be the leader of the opposition, that was helped, that was brought about by the efforts of Big Bob and others like him. Of course, the establishment parties in the south, particularly Micheál Martin and Leah Varadkar and others, used Big Bob, give off about Big Bob, talked about Sinn Féin being controlled by shadowy figures like Bob. A nonsense. And we're very proud that Bob helped to bring that about. We're very proud that Bob and other former volunteers are part of what we are. I said in my oration that Leah Varadkar may help Michael Collins, although I don't know if Michael Collins would be supportive of Leah Varadkar. and Micheál Martin may have Eamon Davallera, we have Bobby's story, and he's done more for Irish freedom, peace and unity in this island than either Leo Varadkar or Micheál Martin. Of course, the reason why Micheál Martin and Leo Varadkar won't plan for unity is because they don't want it, because that will remove them from the grip of power that they've had since partition. Bob believed in trying to understand where other people are coming from, and he's convinced and was convinced that we will achieve the referendum and unity provided by the Good Friday Agreement. And he would have worked hard every minute of every day to make sure that we win that referendum. That's part of his legacy. Bob was also a friend, a very, very funny guy, amazing personality, and I want to once again just wish Teresa well, and the entire family, her family, Bobby's family, and Bobby's kin, and of course all his comrades. So many of us were affected by his death. So what do we do about it? Of course we remember him, but we also set ourselves the task of fulfilling Big Bob's vision for the future.
I want to thank everyone who tuned in today to watch this tribute and commemorate the life of our friend Bobby Storey. Today we look back at a life in activism and struggle, and we send our solidarity to Bobby's family. Bobby is an inspiration to Republicans here in Belfast, but also across Ireland and the world. He's with us every day as we continue on our journey to a new and united Ireland. Bobby, like all of us, wanted a better future for everyone on this island. As we shape that future, we remember Bobby's story, and we continue to be inspired by his legacy and the foundations laid by him and others. Bobby would want us to win, to achieve our goals. That's what we must do.
our gan hiule hanir bagolo nawe just nirani shiresi and sango Karolus chinik slache Moranang go jolly na bai ho kahinu hanashin na yo she slache na vindu ni war he go jo for ni stamana in sagor